Hello. You're all muted, but hopefully you can hear me.
Hello.
Yay! I know we have a few people that are having trouble signing in, so I think it's just because I had to start the meeting. Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Jen.
How'd you sleep? I love early morning.
Good morning.
Not. I know Teresa loves early mornings too.
Oh no, coffee and pajamas on the bottom.
Stand up.
Oh no.
Samantha, how are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you? I've got my coffee.
Oh, good. I do too. It doesn't taste as good as yours, though. Samantha was our intern in Tallahassee this year. She did.
I remember. That was so awesome. She did
Yeah.
great on our trip for the chamber fly-in.
Yep, she did a great job.
All right, I'm texting with Angelique trying to get,
Tyler.
yep.
Yeah.
Some people are having no problems and some people are clicking on the link and getting a weird message. So we're trying to troubleshoot that.
Oh.
Is the message you have to have a password?
Yeah, it's a internal meeting only. Please sign in with your company account to join.
I just said sign in with Google and made an account and it let me come in.
Okay.
Mhm.
Jen, I had to do the same thing. I created like my own account and it let me come in.
All the cool kids are here, Jen. Don't worry.
Oh, no, I know that.
Who said? Oh, it was Adam. That voice sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
There's Gio. Good morning.
Good morning. Somebody needs to turn their mute on.
Good morning. All right, let me. Troubleshooting. 1 moment.
Tyler, you're muted.
It's good that we see his name.
Yep, I see a smiling face.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Hello.
Morning.
Good morning. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No, it's my fault. I don't know what I'm doing.
Neither do I, so we'll just get through it together. But I hear both of you, which is wonderful, and I'm going to try now and make Eli
He's
a
here.
presenter. Yep, I see him. I'm going to make him a presenter, or her. Is it her, him? I'm sorry, Eli.
Him.
Him. Good,
Yeah.
good. I keep saying him, but I wanted to make sure because I can't remember who.
Elijah.
Oh,
His
I
name
love
is
that.
Elijah. Yeah. He's sitting across from me, so I'm keeping an eye on him for you.
6 feet, I hope.
Right there, 6 feet.
All
Maybe
right.
8.
All right, I'm trying to make him a presenter just because I know you have some slides.
We have slides that Tyler asked us never to show again, but we're going to show them.
Might as well then. Might as well. Okay. All right, so Eli, I made you a host, and I think all you have to do is share your screen when you're ready to show the slides. So we'll do that in just a moment, in a little bit.
Perfect.
All right, I got a few text messages here. Gotta love technology. One moment. Got Tyler. Okay. One moment.
How are you, Tom?
I'm very well, sir. How are you doing?
Can't complain.
We did one of these yesterday with Representative Leak for the Volusia, Port Orange, and let's see, South Daytona. We did one yesterday, 8 o'clock. Same thing.
Mhm.
Yep. Went well.
Good.
Went very well.
Awesome. Well, we had about 50 register, but like I said, I think 20 or 30 of them are having some technical issues. So I'll be answering some text messages throughout this. But thank you guys so much for joining us this morning. I appreciate it, Representative Sirois, and hello, Tom, right there. I see your face.
Here I am.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know some people are dialing in. Again, apologize for the technical difficulties, but we're all still learning. It was such a great pleasure to watch you guys both when you were talking to Marcia for the luncheon. And I know you have updates even since then. So we're glad to have you both this morning. It's been a journey these past 6 weeks, and certainly not different for the Cocoa Beach Regional Chamber of Commerce. Appreciate you guys taking the time this morning to come, and everyone else for being here. The birds are chirping on my back porch. Sorry about that. I want to kick it over to Ashley Wood, who is our 2020, God bless her, Government Affairs Committee Chair. She picked a heck of a year to be our chair for Government Affairs, but I just, again, want to thank you, welcome you, and what we'll do is we'll have Ashley say a couple words just on session, which I know you're going to be touching on, the wrap up of session, and then, of course, we would love for you to speak about COVID-19 and what's been going on since all of this broke. And so I'll kick it over to Ashley, and then we'll start with Representative Sirois. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome to our Zoom Government Affairs meeting. I know this is a little weird and different, but we really appreciate Representative Sirois and Senator Wright coming on and giving us a legislative update. I know a lot of things happened January, February, beginning of March. We did pass a budget. You guys did great with that. Visit Florida was funded, which we are happy about. And there were a lot of other things. I know both of you had a lot of strong bills. And if you guys could speak on what you guys are proud of, things that you'd like to see in the upcoming sessions, and just things about the community would be wonderful. So we'll shoot it over to Representative Sirois first.
Well, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning, Tyler.
Well, thank you all very much for having us. It's a pleasure to join you this morning and have this opportunity to talk about what we were able to accomplish this last legislative session. You know, first of all, I have to say that, and I think I speak for Senator Wright in this regard as well, that an active Chamber of Commerce makes our job so much easier. It is such a great conduit for information. We get the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of legislation, what we need to hear, what issues need to be pointed out, things that we can work on. And I think that moving forward, especially as government responds to this crisis that we find ourselves in, the communication from business groups is going to be critical, and advocacy by small business especially is going to be critical moving forward. So the Chamber is a very important tool in the toolbox in terms of the legislative process. I'm very proud of the work that we were able to do this legislative session. Florida passed a $93.2 billion budget. And that budget, just to touch on some of the high points, does contain funding for Visit Florida for another 3 years, which I think is going to be a really important part of our discussion moving forward in terms of how we reboot tourism in our state. We also have investments in Space Florida, another important area where we're going to seek to diversify Florida's economy. A lot of investments in the environment and water projects, $100 million investment in Florida Forever. So there's a lot of areas where we have reason to be very proud in this budget, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. I expect that we're going to have to make some very difficult choices here in the future, perhaps the near future, in terms of the decline in revenue that we've seen as a result of coronavirus shutdowns and economic impacts. It's important to note that the budget that the legislature passed was based on numbers prior to any of this happening. So, the budget that we passed was based on record tourism, record unemployment, a housing economy that was booming in our state. Tourism was booming in our state. And then in the course of just a week, I think that last week of February, as we headed into March, all of that came crashing to a halt. So I think we're going to have to revisit our budget in terms of reprioritizing and redirecting funds to where they're needed. The last thing that I'll mention, just in terms of my efforts and legislation that I had the opportunity to work on, very excited about partnership with Senator Wright. Couldn't ask for a better partner in Tom Wright. For the first time, our school grading process is going to recognize kids who choose to do military preparedness coursework. And our school grading criteria will reflect a commitment to kids that want to pursue an education and a career in the military, and our schools will be recognized for that achievement. The other thing I had an ability to work on that's going to be important to our pharmacists and our state moving forward is scope of practice, allowing pharmacists to do more under a collaborative agreement with a physician, including test and treat for the flu, and now under the governor's orders, prepare to test for coronavirus as well. And then lastly, and I know that some of you will roll your eyes and think I'm a broken record, but really proud of the progress we made this session in vocational and technical training. I really do believe that is the path to our future. Those jobs, welders, plumbers, electricians, have always been the backbone of the American economy. They always will be. And I'm committed to pursuing more funds and resources for those programs here in Brevard County as well. We had some success with that. So thank you very much for having me this morning.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And Eli, if you can share your screen on the bottom there, you might be able to, have your slides ready to go in slideshow mode, and we will be able to see it, I hope.
Started a screen
So
sharing
far,
already.
so good. Yay. So far, so good.
Look at that.
If you start this, yay. It's like we're professional and everything.
I have trained him so well.
You've done a great job. Way to go.
Thank you very much. It's really the other way around. These young people in my office, they train me. Yeah.
Well, the myths are all going by the wayside with me as a millennial in technology. I proved that publicly several times.
Some days I feel like the newscaster. Somebody else is writing what's on the teleprompter. I'm just the face of the office.
You just keep it rolling. Keep it rolling.
I have a great team.
Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you this morning.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone is healthy and staying safe. I was thinking about it this week already, that I think for the most part in the legislature, I haven't heard of anybody having this coronavirus. And in my personal life, I don't know anybody that has been affected by it. So I know it's a terrible situation for some people, but some days I try to remind myself that it's actually less than, it's like fractions of 1% of our population. It was 1/10 of 1% that was affected in the state of Florida. But look what it's done to our economy, and look what it's done to all of us. It's a crazy time, and we've never been through this before. I hope we never have to go through this again. But I'm excited too, as Tyler told you, we had some great things that came out of the session. This seems like a year ago now, but it wasn't that long ago. And the legislature really did a lot of great things for both large and small businesses across our state. And as Tyler mentioned about, the importance of our local chambers, which help us to stay on the track and do a good job, hopefully a good job. I hope you think we do. But we also have a situation where we realize how important the small businesses are in our communities. They're the backbones of our communities. And I'm a big home rule type of guy, and I think a lot of you have heard me say that before. And that's what a local business is too. They're a local business adding to the economy, providing jobs, and oftentimes those people are some of the most horrific givers, as providing time and money for their communities. So I really appreciate this opportunity this morning to speak with all of you in the Cocoa area. So he talked a little bit about the Sigowski funds. It was fully funded, and we've supposedly put a lock on that this time and thrown away the key. So we're hoping that stays stays in place. It's been a long time since we've actually fully funded the Sagowski Fund, and a long time since we thought that it will not be rated. And we all know how important affordable housing is, and the need is just growing every day. So that's definitely important. Was very proud to also help Dana Young, as Tyler Sirois has already brought up. We fully funded Visit Florida. Do you realize that when she came on, she had a $76 million budget, and there was some people in the legislature that thought Visit Florida should totally go away. And I've been in sales and marketing my whole life. If you don't market your products, you're not going to be around. And sometimes I like to use the example of your car dealers. Car dealers, we know every car dealer in our community. We know every brand that they sell, but yet they have to advertise every day in order to keep that message out there. So I'm a believer in funding Visit Florida, and I've told Dana to her face more than once, she's done a fantastic job. We took $26 million away from her, almost a third of her budget, and yet she's still rocking and rolling, doing a great job. So hats off to her. So the budget also cleared some great grants that will be fitting with our governor's desire, and I think Tyler's desire and mine also, to expand the more technical programs in our communities. As he already mentioned, it's the backbone of America. Not everyone is desiring a 4-year college degree. A lot of individuals have skills and aptitudes and love to work with their hands, so to speak. And if we can help them and become more of a community that can provide vocational training, in addition to our great college training, it's going to go a long way to help our governor's executive order, where he is proclaiming we are going to be Florida #1 in workforce in the United States. So along with that, we got a nice chunk of money for Eastern Florida State College to help with their apprenticeship programs. Okay, one of the things that we were able to also put together with Coach P, Representative Palencia, was a Brevard Achievement Center grant. So another $199,714. I get a kick out of that being such an odd number. Why didn't we just do 200,000? But anyway, it's $99,714. We got a grant for the Brevard Achievement Center, which is, are you all familiar with their great work? Yeah, they do a wonderful job. In the Senate, being that I've only been there 2 years, I found out the first year that it's tradition to give little gifts at the beginning of session. So this past session, we decided to have, and I'm going to show them to you, we had these little sharks made, and they were made for us by the Brevard Achievement Center. And those people there were so proud. Each one of them has their initials. So this was made by this person with the initials BAC, hand painted. And we had 160 of these made that I paid for. And we handed those out to all the legislators up in Tallahassee to remind them that we are the proud shark capital of the world in Brevard County. So that's a great program. We also got another $100,000 for the folks at Astronaut High School. I teased them a little bit. Last year they were asking, or a year before that, they were asking us to help fund a welding class, which would need a whole new building. So we got them some significant dollars for them to build a brand new building that would house their welding program. And then they came back this year a little sheepishly and said, we forgot to ask you for money for the welders. So we got them $100,000 this year in the budget for the welders. And we also got from Merritt Island High School $10,000 for their staying station. Are any of you familiar with the staying stations? These are little cubes that they build, and you maybe know about them. They're little cube satellites that go into orbit, piggyback on some other rocket that leaves the Cape there, and they're up there floating around the Earth, and they're reporting back to these young students right to their laptops. And I was there at their school when their most recent one reported back for the first time, and you would have thought that they had just won $1 million. They were so excited to have that little tiny satellite up there in outer space talking back to them. So good job with Tyler. It was his idea, and I was happy to support him on the JROTC program. That is going to go a long ways to help our young people. I think even Congressman Waltz from the Volusia County and North area is all thinking about how we can interact with our youth more get them off the couch, find things that they can do to be proud of, and learn some skills before they become voters, if you will, and involved in their communities. And this is just one great way with the JROTC program to get them some military education and allow that to go towards their school grade. Surviving spouse ad valorem tax reduction is another bill that we got passed. And for those of you that aren't aware of it, if you're a veteran in the state of Florida and you are disabled because of combat duty, for example, 25% disabled, you can take that disability information to your local tax collector, and your real estate taxes will be reduced by 25%. If you're 50% disabled, by 50%, and so forth. But up until now, once that veteran passes, the remaining spouse no longer was allowed to take that advantage of that discount. And we've actually had some spouses have to sell their homes because they no longer could afford the higher tax rate. And so this bill will allow the remaining spouse to continue to enjoy that, I believe, earned discount until that spouse either remarries or passes, and then it's over with. So I'm proud of it. I think it's the right thing to do for our families out there that have a disabled veteran, and the spouse, heaven forbid, can continue to live in that home until their final days. And lastly, Senator Mayfield's Water Quality Improvements Bill. She's the appropriations chair for water and wastewater, and she's done a fantastic job addressing septic to sewer, wastewater-based treatment facilities, penalties for those that pollute. Unfortunately, we have some communities in Florida that are not maintaining their treatment plants well enough, and when we get a heavy rain, they flood, and you know what comes out of them, and that's not acceptable. We have to make sure that we keep the waters clean. And if I can, one more thing I'll talk about is Senator Bean's domestic violence bill. Where, as you probably are well aware, the DCF is going hot and heavy after one, Mrs. Carr will say, and you know, she was taking money away from our domestic abuse councils throughout the state, and it was time that happened. So we're working with him and his department to shore up all of our domestic violence shelters that are throughout the state. And get those funded the way they should be. And we're actually trying to find this lady right now. The U.S. Marshals are trying to find her, of all things. She's avoiding a prosecution. So I'll stop there and see what else I can do for you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of your reports, and everyone else that, like I said, I can't apologize enough for the technical difficulties. I've gotten my phone blowing up for text messages, but a lot of people have been able to call in. And just to note, we are recording, not that it would change answers or reports, but I wanted to let you know that we are recording the meeting. So we will share that with the partnership, so those that had trouble getting on could see this information. I'm going to ask that anyone that has a question, please drop it in the chat, and I will help moderate that. And we will get the questions to Senator Wright and Representative Sirois. I know that I have one glaring touch point, one single thing that seems to be the biggest hurt right now, and understandably so, and that's unemployment. And the system being overwhelmed, not working, people being denied. You know, the chamber has a lot of 1099 workers and contract workers. We touched on that a little bit yesterday on our webinar, excuse me, with Mark Wilson and Dr. Jerry Parrish with the Florida Chamber. But it just seems to be a continual thing that we are seeing. And I know that the site has been updated to handle the magnitude of what we're facing. But if either one of you or both of you could just address that. I know the governor has come out, and I was able to have a conversation with his chief of staff on what updates have been done, why it's happened the way it's happened, and what's coming down the pike. And it seems like they shut down, not Pegasus, that's been open, as they said, but the connection site for 3 days to start processing some of those payments. But I know that a lot of our partners are struggling. You know, it's a decision that a lot of leadership has had to make, a very tough decision to lay people off during this time. So if you could just address that from your perspective and where you're sitting and what you anticipate. We'll start with Representative Sirois.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. And I understand this morning that the Department of Economic Opportunity now has made the pandemic unemployment assistance available to 1099 workers. So that's something I'm just getting more details on. But the floridajobs.org is going to be the clearinghouse for unemployment information. Look, let me say from the get-go that the state was caught unprepared for this unemployment situation. It is unprecedented, and the system was not able to keep up. Yesterday we likened it to a Titanic lifeboat. In theory, it's supposed to work fine, but when put to the test, it obviously got overwhelmed with the likes of a crisis that it had never seen before. So the governor has taken, I think, steps that are appropriate to get that system up and working and meeting the demands of Floridians. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We have a long way to go. And I don't know that there's an end in sight in terms of the demands on our unemployment system. A couple of things have been done to streamline the application. One of the things that I was pleased to see is that COVID-19 was added as a reason for separation from employment. For a couple of weeks, the governor had waived the requirement for folks to report their job search every 2 weeks. I think that requirement is going to be reinstated early this month. But my office has been inundated with folks who are families in crisis, and they're finding difficulty putting a meal on the table. Just driving in this morning, I passed by a food bank on Merritt Island at about 7:30 that probably had 50 cars in line waiting for food. So, between the state's assistance and the federal assistance that is offered, there are opportunities for people to get help. And I know this is not what folks want to hear, but it's going to take some patience in terms of getting that processed and getting that help available to the people that need it.
Yeah, Jen, I agree with Representative Sirois. He's right on target. It is an unfortunate situation, and of course, when something of this magnitude happens, we all feel as though how come it can't be handled, and really it just isn't designed to be this many people. That we got. I think they were saying the numbers were higher than in 1 week than we would normally even see in a year's time. And so I have to give a lot of credit to our governor. I think he's handled himself very well with all of his meetings and all of the questions that are asked of him after he talks. He's moved 2,200 state employees over to the DOE to try and handle some of these requests. We have been given, in part probably Representative Sirois has also been given special phone numbers for us to try and call in directly and get some answers. And so I encourage anyone who's having difficulties still, they can contact my office, and our people will take their information. They work it every day. We're working 186, I believe it is right now, of people that have applied and feel as though they're not getting any responses, or they're getting ineligible, and why am I ineligible? And we're working through this, and right now we're starting to get some thank you emails. Thank you, I got my check. So you're welcome to encourage anyone that you know is having a difficult time to call or email our district office, and it's easy to find our information. So that's not a problem, and we'll go to work for you on it. But it is one of those situations in life that is just, it's never been this way before, and there's no way that the state would have been able to know that it was going to be this difficult. But at the same time, what we're doing is we're trying to, on the local level here, our district office is in Port Orange, greater Daytona area, and I'm sure Tyler has the same connections also as we do, that we know a lot of agencies that are available to help people. So if someone needs food right away, we can get them food. They need shelter, we can get them shelter. They need something, I hate to bring it up, but we had one individual that was desperate for diapers for his child. So we found somebody to donate some diapers for his child. It's hard to believe that we're in that type of a shape right now as Americans, but it's a difficult situation. I think hopefully the skies are beginning to clear a little bit, if you will, and each and every day we're going to get this country and this state back to full business.
Well, thank you. And I made the joke on an earlier meeting or webinar that I wish during this toilet paper crisis that everyone would keep away from our baby wipes and our and our diapers, because us mothers of young children actually shaking her head, and when we go to that aisle and it's gone, it's been tough. But thank you for addressing that, and I know both of your offices have personally been taking on some of these unemployment issues and trying to assist, and I see the conversation going on in the chat there, and I appreciate your willingness to help. It has been a tough time, including for chamber employees, quite frankly. You know, it's been 5 or 6 weeks, so I really appreciate you stepping in and helping with that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about, we've heard that there might be a special session related to COVID-19. Is that something that you see on the horizon, and what are the things, knowing that the state budget is going to be significantly impacted, that you would be bringing up in a session like that?
You want me to go first? You want Tyler to go first?
Whoever wants to go, we're in it.
Senator Wright here. Well, I understand what Tyler was saying earlier about, we may have to see some major changes in our budget. I'm one of these, he's more in the area of law and order, and I'm more in my lifestyle of sales and marketing. So I'm more of it's going to be just fine attitude. And one of the things that we were able to do, as Tyler will remember, we were able to put immediately $52 million aside before we even wrapped up session, because we anticipated there was going to be some additional monies needed. And then as we really got scared, where we had a few House members that we thought might have been infected, and the whole place went nuts up there in the Capitol, we stuck another $300 million aside just in case the 52 wasn't enough. So there is $352 million earmarked just to help. And as Representative Leak brought up again yesterday, and I forget to remind people, Florida is one of the most fiscally responsible states of the whole country. And we do have $4 billion in reserves for a rainy day. So totally there's $4,352,000,000 in reserves, and some of those can be tapped. Now, do I think we'll have a special session? I believe that we will, because we'll probably have to do some, requirements by statute where certain things are approved by both the House and the Senate and voted on. And I don't know the number, but there will be a substantial check coming from the federal government as part of their funding for all the states. And we may have to look at that and say, okay, that money will go to pay all of these National Guard people. That might go to pay for all these tests that we've been doing. So we probably will have a session. I think maybe Tyler Sirois got a message last night, perhaps. I know that we did in the Senate, that there's some requirement that we fill out a survey as to whether or not we want to have another session yet this summer. And apparently, from what I'm being told, that's a requirement that we have to respond to that and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But of course, it all rests with our governor, whether or not we'll be having another session, and both Speaker of the House Oliva and President Galvano in the Senate. So that's my take on it, that I think we're going to be just fine. I hope that we continue to open up businesses a little faster. I know our governor's being extra careful. But I'd like to see us have 50% in restaurants and some other things, but that's just my wish list. But I think if we do well as citizens and as Floridians, we're going to see phase 2 come online fairly quickly. And then if we do well there, phase 3, and we'll be back running. So that's my take on it, Jen.
Thank you. And Representative Sirois, we'll kick it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I agree with Senator Wright's assessment. I think that things related to the budget, it's still a little soon to assess whether or not a special session is going to be necessary. I think we'll have a better idea in a couple of weeks on the impacts to revenues. Florida's budget is based based largely on sales tax revenues that the state receives. And we know that they're going to be down significantly. But January and February were great months, and we actually exceeded the amount of revenue coming in that was projected. So on top of what was received, what exceeded projections, and now what we have in the way of reserves and federal assistance that is available, and the governor's veto pen, which is going to be another source of savings, between all of those things, we may be able to skate by and preserve things like we've made investments in the environment and teacher salaries and vocational and technical training opportunities. But the governor has said in public comments that he's going to use his veto pen, and I expect he's going to cut pretty deep. And unfortunately, that's going to put a lot of the projects on the table that are important to the senator and I in terms of Brevard and Volusia County. So that's something that we're still kind of in a wait and see mode. In my personal opinion, as I've said before, in terms of the state legislature, I'm labor, I'm not management at this point. But I do think that one of the things we ought to be taking a look at is going back to Tallahassee and putting liability protections in for businesses that are having COVID issues, the sectors of our economy that are providing services to people, and how do we put protections in place to make sure that business owners are not being held accountable for some of these protections that government is requiring, or people that are still getting sick and transmitting the illness in a communal situation. And I'd like to see us expand our efforts at deregulation. We had our economic opportunity and freedom legislation that passed through both chambers this past session. It took government out of the business of regulating hairstylists and barbers and landscapers and interior designers. I think we ought to go further in terms of clearing some of those hurdles to make it easier for people to engage in small business. So there's things that we can certainly do as a legislature to, I think, reboot our economy here in the state.
Well, thank you for that. And certainly liability has been at the top of our list as a chamber, and all 4 chambers in the community have been watching that as we get back into phase 1 and eventually 2, 3, and 4, just thinking about what a potential lawsuit could do to a small business. 80% of our chamber has 1 to 5 employees. So that's really something that we are keeping a close eye on. And I appreciate you saying that. And if you could, we have a comment coming through in the chat that says to comment on the initiatives to increase the vote by mail option for upcoming elections. I know it being an election year on top of everything else, it's a lot going on. And so if either one of you wants to comment on that and what that might mean for the election year.
I'm happy to comment on that one. Our supervisor of elections here in Brevard County, Lori Scott, is on top of that. And she has been a huge proponent of voting by mail since she took office nearly 12 years ago. So, in my judgment, we don't need any legislative action there because that option already exists. Call the supervisor of elections office. You can request a mail ballot. I believe that mail ballot request stays on file with her office for 2 years. And about 30 days before the election, your ballot will arrive in the mail in an envelope with a secrecy sleeve. You vote it, put it back in that sleeve, sign it, send it back to her office, and it's done. I don't know that I support, a universal mail ballot election, only because that's something that is an option that already exists, and it's the civic duty that we all share to participate in the electoral process.
Jen, I agree with Representative Sirois. It's heavily used. My wife and I have been using it for probably 10 or 15 years because our schedules today are so crazy. You never know, and you might be planning on going to do your walk-in vote tomorrow or the next day, and then all of a sudden your schedules change and you don't vote, and that isn't the way we want to run this society. Everyone needs to vote, and I think that the vote by mail option is great. But also I agree, there's going to be those that like to go and vote in person for whatever reason. And so I don't think we need to legislate anything. I believe some of this stuff is one party or another party thinking that if we get it this way or we get it that way, it's going to give them an edge. And some days I wish we would just leave this alone and let this democracy continue as it has for so many hundreds of years.
Well, thank you both for your comments on that. And seeing no other questions in the chat, I'm going to make one other comment. But if you have questions, please put them in there and I'll make sure that they get read aloud. Angelique and everyone has been so great in putting information, including email addresses and phone numbers for both Representative Sirois and Senator Tom Wright's office. So if you have issues that you are dealing with, please give them a call, especially with unemployment. You both have been so helpful. You mentioned, and thank you so much for your kind words about chambers of commerce and the role that we're going to play as we begin to restart and recover. Can you give us, from your perspective, maybe just for this group, being the Government Affairs Committee for the Cocoa Beach Regional Chamber of Commerce and the people that are eventually going to watch this, can you give us maybe one key takeaway as we begin phase one of the restart that you would like to see a Chamber of Commerce really assisting with for Brevard County and for the businesses that are a member of our chamber? Is there something that you would like to see us push or be educating specifically on?
Well, if you're,
Like
so Senator Wright here, the one thing that I think would be interesting to help, and it's because I help some restaurants here in Volusia County, and so I seem to be focused on them a little bit, and they're really hurting. Of course, so many businesses are hurting, but I think that what's going to happen is we need to help them understand what the 25% needs to be. We need to help them understand how to maintain that, because there are going to be competitors of theirs that are going to say, hey, they've got 30%. And it's going to get messy that way by someone who's not getting any business. And how come the restaurant across the street is getting business? And so if we can help hold their hand a little bit and say, look, this is how we think we can get through this. We're going to get this 25% moved to 50%, I feel, within a week to 10 days. And then from there, we do an even better job, and we'll move on to having it back to full normal. Now, some areas also, if you haven't thought of this, and you probably have, but some areas, for example, in the city of Port Orange, they have talked to their city leaders because, as you know, the governor said if you have outdoor seating, just stay 6 foot apart with the tables. If you have indoor seating, only 25% occupancy. So the city of Port Orange is temporarily going to lift any requirements, and you can put up a tent in your parking lot. You can put up some tables outside, so you can create temporary outdoor seating and be able to maximize your property and have an increased number of customers. So that would be one thing that I could think of off the top of my head, Jen. That might be a help that you can help your members thrive a little faster than some of the other people that aren't your members.
Thank you very much. And yes, as being a very tourism and hospitality heavy chamber of commerce, that's been a call that we've received a lot. You know, we have a lot of restaurants and tourist attractions and things like that. So I'll kick it over to Tyler, and keeping in mind too, you know, we have a lot of calls coming from tourists already. So with the announcement of phase one and the back and forth on the beaches being open, the parking being closed and that sort of thing, that is the #1 call we are fielding at this time as a chamber is tourism. So if you could also maybe touch on that as we get into phase one and what you would like for us to be relaying. I know it's a thin line that we're walking between safety and getting our economy back going again, but we want to walk that alongside of you.
Sure. Well, you know, the chamber's advocacy and involvement in the legislative process moving forward is going to be more critical than ever. And I was excited that we had Brevard Day this past session. We're going to have another Brevard Day next year that Angelique and I've already started planning. But, you know, I was reminded recently of President Bush after 9/11, when he came down to Orlando International Airport. He stood in front of an airplane and told everybody it's safe to fly again. Go on that vacation. Go down to Disney and visit. Come down to Orlando was the message that he was saying. And I think that same concept applies today. Go out to dinner. You know, we have those guidelines. Go out to dinner. Sit outside. Sit inside if it's under the 25% capacity. But it's going to take all of us engaging again in our economic participation. And that high tide is going to raise all boats. So we need to be willing to do that. We need to have the courage to do that in a way that is safe. And we know that the social distancing guidelines and hand washing and all of that exists, and we need to be mindful of that. But we also need to be supportive. If you don't want to go out to dinner, continue to get carry out at curbside, because I have a lot of friends that made a behavior of a tradition of doing that. Maybe on Friday night. Now they try to do it 4 or 5 nights a week in terms of ordering dinner out to support our local restaurant owners. It's going to be slow, and I appreciate the governor's approach. I think it's methodical and data driven. And we need to be cautious as we move forward, because we don't know a lot about this virus. And there's still a lot to be learned. And there's a lot of concern about this fall and perhaps a resurgence that we all need to be aware of. So I would encourage everyone to move cautiously, and as a chamber, you all are going to be looked to as an example in terms of how we approach this revival of business in our state. The last point that I would make, and something that we've got going for us that nobody else has, is our space, commercial aerospace sector here. And you're going to see a big launch on I think May 27th. The celebration of that may be a little muted, given all of these social distancing guidelines. But in the months ahead, I think you're going to see that increased tempo in launches. And when it is safe, people are going to come by the thousands, I believe, to stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants, line the causeways, to watch some of these historic launches that are occurring here on the Space Coast. We have many reasons to be optimistic.
That's for sure, and thank you for sharing that. And I know that's been, I think it will be a challenge of ours going into this next month. We're so excited to launch humans back into space from U.S. soil right here in our backyard, and we get to watch from our driveways, thank God. But having that dialogue nonstop with people that are calling and wanting to see it has been interesting so far. So we'll see how it rolls out. And you're right, there's still so much unknown and uncertainty, I feel like, with the virus and the resurgence. And is it going to go away entirely, or is this going to be cyclical like the flu? And I want to thank you for your efforts. Representative Sirois, I know you've been a key component for the pharmacists being able to have access to these tests and being able to get that done. So thank you for what you're doing. Does anyone have any other additional questions for either Representative Sirois or Senator Wright? I see some comments coming through the chat, and thank you. Thanks, Angelique, for the kind words. And then I agree, Adam, business owners and local government will have to be creative and flexible for us to resume and be safe. So it's always at the top of our minds. We will push out any guidelines that we receive in real time. And of course, use the chamber as a resource, and our COVID resource page on our website, cocobeachchamber.com. We'll be updating daily, continually. Any other questions or final comments from anyone? Again, I can't thank you enough for joining us this morning. We know how busy you are. Phone calls coming in left and right, and your staff has been wonderful through all this. So just appreciate everything that you've done and for joining us.
Thank you.
A reminder, if anyone has any issues that they want to contact our office, we'll be happy to tackle that for them and get involved. We've had some people that are getting disconnect notices, so we get on top of those and talk to the commissions, the utility commissions, and remind them of the governor's order, and they're like embarrassed. They say, oh, it's an automatic letter. We didn't mean to scare the pants off of that person. And so, there's a lot of, the governor touched on something the other day when he talked on Monday and talked about what we were going to do on opening up the state. And he kept reminding us that don't let fear take control. And I've been thinking that for a long time. This has really put the fear in all of us. And there's so many people out there that are absolutely, totally scared to death, is the way I put it. And so we're a resource. Representative Sirois is a resource. Our office is a resource, and that's part of our job. We want to take care of our constituents. We have 550,000 constituents. I do, and so all but one has called us so far. I'm just kidding about that, but that's what we're here for. So don't be bashful. Let us know how we can help. And thank you for including me today. I appreciate it, and appreciate all the hard work you guys do. Together, as the saying goes, we're all in this together. We're going to get through it together.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. And just a comment too, I have a comment of thank you for your support of Brevard Public Schools as well. We have a member in the chat room for that. So
absolutely.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. One comment, I know that the governor in phase 1 has been expanding testing as much as possible, and also we're starting to hear talks of the antibody test. I know in the beginning when this was going on, there was some dialogue about numbers being skewed because testing just wasn't available. And I know there is a lot of fear out there, and I just wanted to say publicly that I did have a family member test positive for COVID, and they are doing very well.
Right.
So I think that's a dialogue that needs to be out there too, that, you know, in the media, there's a lot of hysteria that goes on. And I just wanted to say, I know someone, I have a family member, and they're doing really, really well. So, but I want to thank you for what you are doing. It's a thankless job sometimes, all the time. I understand that. And so just thank you for what you're doing and for what you do for Brevard County. We sincerely appreciate it. Anyone else have a question? Ashley, any final thoughts before we close out?
No, I don't think so. I thank you so much for both of you coming on and updating us and letting us know what's going on with COVID and unemployment. I know that's a huge issue right now. So we just appreciate it from the chamber.
All right, everyone have a great day, a safe day, a 6 foot apart day. Make sure to sanitize your hands, and we'll see you next time. We appreciate you both joining us this morning and everyone that joined the call.
Thank you all.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
all.